Welcome to the Virginia Enterprise Zone How to Qualify webinar. This is an event that's held every year. Normally we do it in person, but this is a great way to make this accessible to more folks. We always try to invite CPAs, construction companies, insurance, bankers, all of the folks that are having interactions with developers or commercial businesses or industrial businesses to let them know that the city of Lynchburg has 2 enterprise zones. We are incredibly grateful for that. And by the way, I'm Margette Upshur. I'm the Director of Economic Development and Tourism for the city of Lynchburg. And so we're going to walk you through, and we're going to spend most of our time on the grant that is most applied for within the city. There are 2 grants associated with the enterprise zone. That is the Real Property Improvement Grant, which is what most of our applications are for, but there's also a job creation grant. So we will spend the most time on the Real Property Improvement Grant, but we certainly have information here in our office on the job creation grant as well. So the enterprise zone is a state program that is housed, no pun intended, at the Department of Housing and Community Development for the state of Virginia. So we are the local administrators of the enterprise zone program in Lynchburg. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So this is a map of all of the enterprise zones that are in the state of Virginia. As you can see, there are 57 zones currently in the state of Virginia. Lynchburg has 2 of those zones. So we are very fortunate to have 2 zones because not every municipality has an enterprise zone. So if you have multiple locations, you might want to check in the other places you are with this map to see whether your locations outside of the city are within the enterprise zone. And so just to give you an idea, this is a snapshot of 2020. There were 196 grants awarded. So they awarded 42 businesses with job creation grants, which were 1.9 and some change in total awards. And 2,740 jobs were created as well as retained. The Real Property Investment Grant, there were 154 properties. So you're talking about the whole state of Virginia here. 12.5 million and some change in grants awarded. Which produced $347,809,651 in investments being made in the state of Virginia in these zones. So it's quite the return on investment for the state of Virginia, this program. So the timeline for how this all works is funds are appropriated by the General Assembly. Many of you that I've had conversations with over the years, we don't control the funding. We certainly, raise our hand and say what an important program this is for the city of Lynchburg. Please fund it. Always looking for additional funding here because I think that for Lynchburg, it's been a really, really, really critical piece of our incentive toolbox. So it's a calendar year program, which is why we normally hold these workshops and webinars in late January or early February. The application deadline is April 1st of 22. But what we're looking at here is final placed in service, which means your certificate of occupancy or your finalized permit for this for 2021 is 12/31/21. So you're applying in April or before for the calendar year ending 2021. So it is really exciting to say that hard copies are no longer accepted. So this is really thrilling because for a while there, all of your applications had to be done online. You submitted the original application online, but it had to be followed up by a hard copy. And they had to receive that by, as you can see, 11:59 on April 1st, 2022, or whatever year it was. And we have had people that, because your accountant's involved and you've submitted it online, we're sending the hard copy. They just absolutely forgot. And when the hard copy did not arrive, they were not allowed to participate in that year. So when I'm talking to you all about the enterprise zone is geographically specific. So it is governed by, it has boundaries to it. We work on adjusting those boundaries on a regular basis. Residential parcels are not eligible. A residence is not eligible. It has to be a commercial or industrial or a mixed use kind of endeavor. So we're always looking at the boundaries, and it is available. The Real Property Improvement Grant is available to investors that are doing rehab, that are doing an expansion, that are doing new construction within the boundary of the enterprise zone. So our GIS, if you go on GIS for the city, lynchburgva.gov, you can look at almost any property and see whether or not it is a property that's located in one of our enterprise zones. But you can always call myself, Alicia Metter, people in our office. We're happy to look it up for you. If you have a property that you're getting ready to do construction or any of that, please let us know. Intersect with our office, because it may be that you're close enough to the boundary that we could do some kind of an amendment. Now, it has to go through a whole process and be sanctioned by the state at the end. We're not the final say, but we certainly could start the ball rolling on that. So the building or facility must be commercial, which includes office and retail, industrial, or mixed use. And the mixed use means in their world, in the enterprise zone world, 30% of usable floor space is devoted to commercial, office, or industrial use. So I will tell you that for all the years that I have been doing this, you pretty much looked at buildings, especially buildings downtown. A lot of times the first floor is used for commercial, and then you've got lofts up above. And there is a specific form that DHCD, that's the Department of Housing and Community Development, I'll just use that acronym, will look at, and it's called the mixed use form that they want your architect or somebody to certify the 30% there. So all I will say is that last year we had at least a handful of projects where, whether they had 30% that was commercial in a mainly residential loft building, became a big question. So, I would always say, look at the application, make sure if you've got a mixed use building that you look at that form and make sure that you can get that completed, because you may just be thinking, I'm in the enterprise zone and I think it's 30%, but they're going to require you to have that form filled out. And it isn't something that I've spent an awful lot of time in all the years I've been doing this. I just want to make a special shout out to that. So a qualified zone investor, which is what your application is going to refer to, and that's going to be property owners. So the property owner is the king. If you're leasing and you made the improvements on the property, you're going to want to get with your property owner and have them sign off that you can collect or can apply for this grant within, because they own the building. Multiple owners, where you've got a group of people that needs to be coordinated, a tenant, like I just said, or, you know, a developer. So the bottom line is whoever owns the property needs to give permission to whomever is applying. If they are applying, no problem. But if it's a tenant or it's a different type of situation there, you have to coordinate all of that. The thresholds for the projects are that if you are doing any kind of rehab or expansion, the threshold is you've got to spend at least $100,000 in order to be eligible to apply for the enterprise zone. If you're doing new construction, that number has to be $500,000. And they do have some considerations for solar, and you can see those on this chart here. So if you're doing a rehab or an expansion and you've got, you know, solar, you're going to put in solar panels, or you're going to put in an alternative energy with solar into your project, they lower that threshold to $50,000. And if you're doing a new construction project with solar, it's $450,000. So what you have there is you've got $100,000 or $500,000 is your threshold. And then the grant is going to be prorated, but 20% of your eligible expenses, you can qualify to have that return, you know, have that returned to you in a grant. It's not a tax rebate. It is an actual physical check. It's a cash grant that would come back to you. So it is prorated. There are 57 zones, as I showed you in the beginning. It depends on how much money the General Assembly has allotted to the program or allocated to the program, and then how many people in that given year apply for the grant funds. And they're divvied up across the board that way. So if you have a project that is all in with eligible expenses, you know, just a few dollars over the $100,000, you may not, you want to check with your accountant, or you want to look at the numbers to make sure that it makes sense for you to apply for the grant. So one of the things that we do here in our office is we know that you are doing a lot of other things besides keeping up with the incentive tools that the city of Lynchburg has for you. So we're going to provide concierge service and go one step further. And that is, Alicia and I go through all of the building permits as of 12/31/21. We went through them. We pulled out everybody that had a building permit that was $65,000 or more, because many of you, when your construction crew or you go to get a building permit, you always, most of the time, lowball it. It costs more than that, so that you don't have to pay the city the fee. So we're trying to take into account that we're looking down so that we can personally contact you and let you know, we do this every year, let you know that you may be eligible for the enterprise zone. And I say that because if you finished your project in calendar year 21 and you miss the April 1st deadline to apply, you can't go backwards. So we want to make sure that if you have a project that's eligible, you know that, and you've had the opportunity to get the information from us on this webinar. You can go straight to DHCD to get an application. We want to make sure you know about the program. And so the qualified investments, this is probably not the exhaustive list, but we're giving you an idea. So when you're doing a project, these are the categories that that you can, the expenses for these kind of categories are what you're looking at as expenses that would be qualified to apply for in the grant. These are examples of the things that aren't eligible to put in your list of qualified expenses. So, you know, the cost of the property or the building itself, architectural fees, closing costs, furniture, insurance, machinery and tools, permits and inspection fees. I always tell people, if you can pick it up and take it with you, you probably can't deduct it, right? It's got to be part of that physical rehabilitation, expansion, or new construction. And so, like I said, they calculate this, you know, it's 20% of the qualified real property investment that's in excess of the threshold, which would be either $100,000 for rehab or expansion or $500,000 for new construction. They also have caps on the amount of the grant award that's given to any one property over a 5-year period. So it's $100,000 per building or facility for projects less than $5 million. And it's $200,000 for projects that are over $5 million. And so I told you before that they prorate this. So this year I had an awful lot of, you can see that this, in this particular example here, a rehab, they spent $500,000 on the investment of their qualified items that they could put forth in the application. The threshold's 100. So the grant that's the amount that's eligible is 400,000. You know, you multiply that by 0.20, you get, and there was $80,000 in the grant, right? If you did that on new construction, and then you've got the same thing. You have to hit that threshold. So you minus out, you got 900,000. Deduct the 500, you got 400 again, same thing, $80,000. If you had a $2 million project, you can see that once you remove the 100, you subtract the 100,000, you've got 1.9 million. And when you multiply that, you get an amount that exceeds the grant amount. So then you're left with being capped at the $100,000. But I'll make an example that, see the two that are at $80,000. You put in and you're eligible for a grant based on the calculations there of up to 80,000 and it's prorated. So let's say you get 75,000. Well, if you do any more work to that property where the amount of work you're doing exceeds $100,000 of the threshold, you can go back during that 5 years and apply for the difference. So you have per property, you can hit that $100,000 ceiling by doing the first project. But then if you did other projects, you always have to reach that threshold, but you also can always go back and apply for any money that goes up to that $100,000 cap for under $5 million projects and the $200,000 cap for projects under, over 5 million. So I know that all of that sounds very, very confusing, but once you're applying and you go through this, you will understand that. And we had probably, I don't know, 5 to 10 projects that went on last year and got a finalized permit. They have done additional work this year that exceeds the thresholds. And so they would decide whether they wanted to go in and apply for the difference between the ceiling of the grant and what they actually received. Their solar eligibility, that was a change in 2019. So it is really trying to promote people using alternative energy. And so they have put it in there now that if you have a solar component to what you're doing, then they lowered the threshold from 100,000 to 50,000. And they also did it on new construction projects. They lowered the threshold by $50,000. It's 450 instead of 500,000. So this is just an example of what it looks like. You always just mindful of the threshold that you have there, and then the ceiling that's there. Those are the things you want to keep top of mind. So this just reiterates what I was just saying. And this is the sweet spot, right? So this is where that example a slide or two ago said, you know, once you get to the sweet spot on rehab and expansion is about $600,000, and the sweet spot on new construction this is to maximize the grant at $100,000, right? To hit that $100,000 ceiling. So it's $1 million on new construction and $600,000 on rehab and expansion. And then if your project is more than that, $5 million is the upper threshold for the additional 100,000, right? So under 5 million, your ceiling is 100,000. Over 5 million, your ceiling is 200,000. Sweet spot for rehab and expansion for the 100, 600,000, and $1 million for new construction. For over 5 million, it's going to be 5 million is a sweet spot there. Meaning, if you had a project that is 25 million in capital investment, for the purposes of applying for this grant, you do not have to include all of that. You certainly can, because I want to know it, but giving all of that information to your accountant or that kind of thing, the place you're going to level out is at 5 million when it comes to that over 5 million threshold or capital investment. So, application process. The property must have been placed in service between January and December of 2021. So one of the things I always tell you all is that if you finished your project in March of 21, you just had to wait until the new application and manual comes out from DHCD, which is usually late in the fourth quarter of 2021. So if you finish early, there's still not much that can go on until the end of the year when the General Assembly is finished. They haven't made any more changes to the program, and the DHCD releases to us the new application and the new manual. So what you will need is your placed in service documentation is final certificate of occupancy, final building inspection. And there are some municipalities that do not have a building inspector. There are some eligible expenses that don't necessarily require a building permit. If you have any question like mass painting of a building or some other things, most things do require a building permit. But I'll give you an example. We had a building, an older building, that replaced all of the windows in the building. That's a big expense, but it does not require a building permit. So in order for them to be eligible to apply for this grant, they needed to get a letter from the city saying that replacing all those windows did not require a building permit. So that's what the you know, that's what like a final third party inspection is like they're going to want you to have somebody inspect it, but they're also going to want something from the city saying that this did not require a building permit. And so what I would say to all of this is that's what we're here for. We will help you navigate any of that. Hopefully all of you know that, you know, when you're thinking of, you know, rehab, expansion, new construction, if you're commercial, industrial, or even mixed use, a call to our office, a text to our office, a visit to the website, something where you're in contact with us. These rules and regulations can change at times, and we're right here to help you navigate that. Okay, so okay, online, they have an online form, the website to load all of the information is down at the bottom of this page. So you're going to need the form that is the Enterprise Zone application form, real property improvement grant, the applicant declaration. The LZA review form is the local zone administrator review. That form is very different looking this year. It's 2 pages, and it's where I sign off or saying that your project is located in one of the city's enterprise zones. So that's an important piece that needs to be done. You've got to have a building permit, a certificate of occupancy, or a finalized permit. You've got to have the local zone administrator say your property is located in the zone. You've got to fill out the application, and you've got to have a certified public accountant licensed in the state of Virginia do an attestation report, as well as a W-9, that kind of thing. That all needs to be submitted in one fell swoop through that Enterprise Zone portal, and must be done by 11/59 on April 1st. So the form, the actual form itself, and there, like I said, there's a downloadable copy. To many of you that have a building permit, Alicia and I or Anna have all sent you the new, a copy of the new application and the new manual and the new local zone administrator. But at any time you can go on DHC's website and view these. So Part 1, background information, placed in service, qualified investment, qualification information, contact, application, declaration. Make sure you've got all 7 of those when you submit it online. So the local zone administrator signs in the background information, and I will just say one of the questions that we get the most in our office is what is the property identification number, what's the zone name, the zone number, and the date of the zone designation. So those are all things we can, you know, help you with. We only have 2 zones. I'm going to explain it to you just for grins. We had the second zone in the state. So we have Enterprise Zone number 2 in the state's eyes and Enterprise Zone number 46. So, but in the city, they are looked at as Zone 1 and Zone 2, right? So don't fret over any of that. You can call and ask us. We will make sure that what you have on there is correct. Your property ID number is as how your property is your customer number for that property within the city. It's what comes on your real estate assessment and bill, but we can help you with all of that. Okay, so I said that there are some new things here. So there's a narrative summary explaining the building use, the owner, and a summary of the work completed, and any other helpful background information. So what they're really trying to do here is when everybody is jockeying for funds, DHCD wants to be able to take these projects and highlight them and talk about, you know, how transformative they are in any of our municipalities. So I am always lobbying them to have pictures of your project, photos of your projects put in the annual report. Lynchburg was featured in the last annual report that they did to the General Assembly. So they're just really asking you to give an overview of the project. Placed in service documentation, that's going to be your certificate of occupancy and your final inspection. If you need a copy of any of that, not only do I think you can get it online through the city's Track It system, which is available 24/7, you can always call Alicia and I if you don't have that. This is a list of your qualified expenses, and for many people, you know, I would say on the front end, you know, if you let your construction company know, I'm sure they're all, you know, fully integrated from a technology standpoint now. But if they know you're applying for this, you know, it may be helpful if they can lump what your expenses are in these categories. So it just helps the accountant to be able to see this much was spent on carpentry, electrical, and then you just sum it up and put it in there. So the qualified list of that is just, this must be on the actual worksheet that they have within the application itself. And you must indicate, you know, the amount of any public funds and previous awards made. So during that, remember when I talked about if you didn't hit that threshold, they want you to tell them if you're applying for a piece of property that has already been, you've already applied for in the, you know, in a previous document. And then you're telling them how much you received on that document. So this is where, you know, this is where it blows my mind, but these are where you upload each one of those documents that we went down the list of earlier. And once again, we might not know everything and we don't have the final say on, you know, how things are looked at or treated, but we've done enough and walk through enough of these. We're happy to guide you on some of this. Most of the accountants in town either have done enterprise zone work before, or they work with another accounting firm to do this for them. So loading the information into this portal is something that a lot of them are very comfortable with. So supplemental forms are required if, like you said, you have a mixed-use building, you've got to be able to show them that 30% is commercial, office, or industrial. If you are a tenant, you're going to have to show them that the owner gave consent, or there's some type of tenant coordination. Like if there are multiple tenants and you all did an upfit, that's got to be shown. And then if you own a space, so DHCD has something that they call a building versus a facility. And they look at a facility as being something that can't stand alone. You know, I'll give you an example. In the city of Lynchburg, the Plaza Shopping Center is looked at as a facility. Even though there are individual tenants all throughout there, each one of them is not got a separate address or property. The property is one big piece of property. So it is considered that that piece of property, even if 6 different tenants did upfits, they can only apply based on that one property. But if you have multiple properties, you can apply, and they're unrelated, you can apply for each one of those properties. The property itself is what kind of stands alone, right? They can look at it. And as long as it's not like totally dependent upon the other property in terms of what the use is, most of the time it stands alone. So once again, mixed use buildings. This is where some of the questions came last year. 30% of usable square footage devoted to commercial, office, or industrial use. If there are common areas that are accessible to the commercial space, this may be counted. So a lounge or a conference room, I can see how in some mixed use, you've got areas there within the building that are used by everybody. So that's why you're going to want to have that form filled out, by a licensed third-party architect, surveyor, or drafts person, and then the CPA will review it. So I'm just saying, when you do a project, if there's any question, go ahead and speak with the people doing the work for you at the beginning and say, I'd really like to apply for the enterprise zone. At the end of this, I'm going to need this mixed use form filled out. So grant coordination, this gets back to if you've got multiple tenants in a building or multiple owners, you're going to want to look at that. And you all have to coordinate, because otherwise DHCD is going to decide that kind of for you. It can't be pending work or failed inspection. You've got to have hardcore finalized permit or certificate of occupancy. There have been cases where people have there have been phases of a project where you're going to finish something. You're worked with the building inspector and you can finish a floor and he feels comfortable giving you a certificate of occupancy or a finalized permit for the floor. You just need to let DHCD know that you're going to have phases to that project. You can let us know. We'll call them or we'll coordinate a call to figure out how you do that. But they're telling you that if you let them know all of that, you would only have to meet the threshold once. So there's a benefit to knowing the phasing part of it. If the application spans multiple addresses, it's a facility, but the CO only references one address, right? You have to either let them know that, but chances are, if there are multiple addresses, they're all going to be treated as one if they only have one physical address and it's one physical piece of property as listed in the city assessor and that type of thing. Differences in address from one year to the other, that's going to send up a red flag. And grants are capped per building or facility. They're just saying these are common areas. So if you're trying to apply for multiple buildings and they all have either the same address or one can't function without the other, you're going to probably want to talk to us or talk to DHCD to explain that before you go through the expense of completing an application with the CPA. The other part is vague investments. So, you really need to tell them exactly what the investment is, like the when we showed you the list. If it's concrete work, if it's excavation work, whatever it was, be specific. Don't just call it site work. And then they're telling you, don't list things like change orders, additional floor work. It needs to fall under those categories. So they've got a list, they say on page 12 of the instruction manual. You can look down that list, but the main thing is don't be vague. They've given you a list of what the things are. Make sure that your billing or what the CPA's got to look like will fit into that category. And it's pretty easy to read because you've got a group of people up here in Richmond that are looking at these applications, and they are not builders. They are not construction workers. They are not any of that. So they've got the categories there. And once they start having to dig to figure out what it is, you know, it's probably going to cause, you know, them to take a second look at that application and just say, do we really have all the documentation we need here? And what is this? They are really on the buildings or facilities. So are you know, these are the questions to ask yourself, and they're showing you a strip mall here. Are the buildings freestanding and unrelated in function? Then they're not a facility. You know, are the buildings under common ownership? If they're not under common ownerships, then they're not a facility. If they are under common ownership, and does the owner dictate the hours of operation and promotion? If so, if not, then they're not a facility. If they can stand alone in some type of way. But these are all, to me, you don't have to know all of this. They're just trying to have you ask the question ahead of time if you think that you can apply. And I would hope you would already have this worked out with the owner of the actual whole property there, and make sure, or contact us so that you have the information you need to go talk to them. But if the buildings are related in function and all of that, and they serve a common purpose and they couldn't stand alone, chances are they would be a facility. So these are all of the people at DHCD. For the enterprise zone, that's Kate Pickett works with us. DHCD does a number of things in the community. They handle the Virginia Main Street program. They handle the Industrial Revitalization Fund. We'll probably be doing a webinar on that in the near future. So they have an awful lot on their plates, but we work very closely with Kate on when we're talking about our specific needs here in the city of Lynchburg. So I wanted to give you just a real quick commercial, as it were, or shout out on our side of the house. So we also have the local redevelopment awards. They are for the whole city, not just the enterprise zone, but we wanted to give you some stats. In 2020, we have 2 enterprise zones in LYH. 14 awards were dispersed through both of those zones. Almost 1.4 million. Think about that, y'all. In a pandemic, we had construction, rehab, new construction, all of that, of over $43.6 million in 2020 in the city of Lynchburg. And this is 2 geographic areas within the city. This is not the whole city. This is relegated to 2 specific areas of the city. Really a banner year. Probably one of the biggest years ever in terms of grants. So 1.4 million, nothing to sneeze at, came back directly to tenants and property owners in the city of Lynchburg. So this is a very, very, very valuable program to us. The redevelopment grants, like I said, that covers all of the city. 15 grants totaling more than $240,000. This is where council appropriates this money to us. And then if you pulled a building permit that was over $25,000, we go in and look at all of that, and we notify you if you're eligible for this. So that $240,000 leveraged $16.3 million in capital investments and contributed to the creation of 81 new jobs. that's fantastic. And that all happened in 2020 during the pandemic. So hats off to all the businesses here in the city of Lynchburg who took the opportunity to keep moving forward even amidst all the uncertainty. So this is a quick rundown. The local redevelopment program, 30% commercial requirement, just like the enterprise zone, with a minimum investment of $25,000. The applications open March 1st. You'll be notified by us. If you qualify, we will send you an application. You fill it out and get it back to us. They're due May 1st. And then it's turned around and it's a cash grant. The real estate rehab program. This is a fabulous program that's run out of the city assessor's office. And so you need to, your property needs to be at least 25 years old in order to qualify for this. You have the opportunity to receive up to 10 years of a tax exemption on the improved value of your property. So you've got an older property, you're getting ready to rehab it. You need to contact the city assessor's office on the front end to let them know that you have an older property and you want to make application for this program. We're happy to help you with that, and send you the link to it, any of that, but that has to be done on the front end. That the rest of these programs are all on the back end. This is the one that has to be done on the front end. So workforce assistance, just want to remind you of the tools in the toolkit. We have a jobs portal. If you're an employer and you're looking for people, this is a job portal that pulls from about 900 different job websites and loads them all into one to let people know the jobs that are available in Lynchburg and the surrounding area. You want to make sure you're listed on there. One of the great things about that is that when people are looking for work in these other job sites, they have to register in each one of those. If they come to this one, which is lyhlovesyou.com/jobs, then they do not have to, they can look at all the jobs on the site right there and don't have to, we don't want anything that inhibits somebody from just going ahead and make an application or wants to seek information on what jobs are available. We also have a Navigrid, which is just a grid, as it were, that lets people know, where can I go for training? Where can I go for all of these various things? So we're trying to get this information out to all of our residents so they know that this is available, and all of our companies so that they know that this jobs portal is available to them. This is something we've stood up during the pandemic. We want to make sure that it's a useful tool, so feedback from the companies as well as residents is going to be really, really important. As many of you know, the city of Lynchburg took what I think was an extraordinary measure during the pandemic and prioritized getting our manufacturers and businesses that fell into the categories under the governor's mandate vaccinated. We stood up a regional vaccination center out at Candler Station, and we probably vaccinated, all total, we vaccinated like 35,000 people. But of that, probably more than 5,000 came directly from our manufacturers and businesses here. We have worked once again with the task force at the city of Lynchburg, at the Department of Health. If you have more than 15 people at your place of business that want first shot, second shot, or a booster, please contact myself or Alicia Metter, because they will come and do that on site for you. They will have all 3 vaccines, Moderna, Pfizer, and J&J, whatever it is you need, and they will bring that to you. You just need to let us know. We are really, really proud of the efforts. We don't believe that, you know, many, if any, of our manufacturers had to close during the pandemic, and we really like to think that taking those steps early on, which I have to attribute to our Deputy City Manager Reed Wotica, who was acting as the interim city manager at the time, saw that, and I have been told by a lot of our manufacturers that nowhere else that they have a location was that done. So yay us. Lynchburg loves you. We have a new campaign. One of the things we heard from everybody we know everybody's struggling for workforce. We also know everybody needs a shot in the arm. Where do you live? No pun intended. Where you live, you want to take pride in where you live. You want to rally around where you live. And so we have launched this campaign based on feedback from probably 75 of our businesses, hospitality businesses, manufacturers, restaurants, retail, everybody together said that what we need to do is come out of the pandemic with a positive message and let people know what a great story the city of Lynchburg has to tell. So we want you to be part of that. We want you to say it loud and proud. LYH loves you. And we really are trying to target our residents to remind them of why this is a wonderful place to be, our visitors, our businesses, and the talent we want to attract. So if you'll please visit lyhlovesyou.com. We have a new visitor guide that we produced during the pandemic. We have business window clings. We'd love to see these all over the city. That's how you make a campaign successful. And we'd also like for you, we all learned during this pandemic that communication is key. We would love to have you subscribe to Lynchburg Alerts, as well as the city source. So that's the city takes has a publication not only in the newspaper but online that they produce once a month, I believe, that lets you know what are the things happening and has interesting information in there. We have a brand new communications and public engagement director, Carrie Dungan. She is absolutely fantastic, and I know I echo her sentiments, as well as the new city manager, that we want to hear from you. So if there are things that we can do that would be helpful to you all, but also to make sure that you have information when you need it and the way you need it, please let us know. Enterprise Zone Q&A. So you went through this, you sat through this whole thing. Good for you. I appreciate it. But we would love if you have specific questions that you want to run by us, or that you want us to go and find the answers for you. Thursday, February 10th, 2022, from 10 to 11. We want you to register. It'll be a Zoom. You'll get an mail after you register. And a lot of times people riff off of each other asking these questions. We have some wonderful CPAs in the city that have been doing this for years. And they are always happy to help us find answers to your questions as well, because they really are, besides us as the local zone administrator, the CPA that attests to your application is going to be one of your biggest advocates with DHCD, because they have experience in explaining, situations that may have not come across the desk of the folks at DHCD. So please think about that. We're doing this by this webinar so that you don't have to gather. You can look at it at your leisure. You can re-look at it. But also we want to take your questions and provide answers for you. So Thursday, February 10th, 10 to 11, here's the link. Please contact us. As I've said, you don't have to remember. I say this all the time on business visits to people. We have a lot of tools in the toolkit, but when you describe to us what it is you're doing or what it is you want to do, we can help you navigate all that. So I'm Margette Upshur. You've got Anna Benson and Alicia Metter. Most of you are in contact with us on a regular basis anyway. We really appreciate it. We appreciate our relationships with you. Excuse me. This is the phone number. You can text us, call us. Thank you so much